So our discussion question for chapter 1 is who is controlling education? This question over the past couple of years has become less clear. So we're going to explain how the 10th and 14th Amendment give control to the states, and then we'll discuss No Child Left Behind and the Every Student Succeeds Act. So the first thing we wanted to do as a group is we wanted to make sure everyone understood the 10th Amendment. So the 10th Amendment reserves education as a state function, thus placing the primary responsibility for public schools on the individual states. So this is where the question is, who is controlling education? Truly, for 90 or more percent of this is going to be controlled at the local and state level. So, and that's just where our U.S. Constitution Bill of Rights does not have education written in there as a right. So then it's put in there under the 10th Amendment or delegated down to the states.
I feel like states usually have a lot of control over curriculum, teacher certification. Those sort of things are what falls down into the state. Whatever isn't covered in the federal government is basically given to the states, is a summary of what Dexter was talking about.
And yeah, like my partner said, all state regulates like teacher certification and policies that our board implements into our districts. And that all falls under the 10th Amendment.
Yep, and this is where we'll probably see a lot of those things as we move into the role of education of understanding our state statutes and making sure we apply them correctly. We need to know the federal stuff because that's going to be there, but our state statutes are going to change and they're going to be adapted over time. So that's where we truly have to understand that the states are controlling the education, and understanding your state statutes from an administration perspective is key for being successful. Next, we want to talk about the 14th Amendment, which is basically due process, and students have the right of due process and school personnel to ensure that equal protection under the laws and fundamental fairness occur in matters involving deprivation of liberty and property.
I basically talked about how the 14th Amendment, if the state isn't handling things correctly, the federal government has to step in and make sure that fair treatment is happening for all, and that all kind of falls under the 14th Amendment.
And I was talking about how the due process is just holds the board accountable to make sure that all of those policies and all of those freedoms and rights of our students and staff are being met and in a fair way.
The big thing we were talking about before we started recording is this 14th Amendment really is going to play an impact on the later chapters when we get into disciplining and students' rights of going through due process and making sure that we're not just making decisions emotionally or because we think that's the right way, but we're doing it based on policy, and we're doing it based on, and we're giving students due process in the process of discipline. So then we get to
go ahead.
It's all you, go ahead.
That kind of leads us into the No Child Left Behind, where that was the first part of the government. Our next part of the question is how the federal government was able to control education through the No Child Left Behind. And basically that talked a lot about making sure that students are tested so that we can ensure that they have a good education no matter what. And that also leads us into the next part. But do you guys have anything else on that?
So
go ahead.
No Child Left Behind was a pretty big step in like 2000 or 2002. I believe George W. Bush signed that one into law. But it really is when the federal government took a stance of oversight on the states. And so then there's a lot of pushback from that over the years. And then Obama is the one that adapted it to the Every Student Succeeds, because there was funding, so money tied to No Child Left Behind and state standardized testing.
And I feel like No Child Left Behind was very controlled by the federal government. And when the Every Student Succeeds Act came in, it gave more power to the states to make decisions about what their students need. And they gave more funding also to the states.
So the Every Student Succeeds Act, the one thing that I took away from it it wasn't necessarily in our chapters, but so we did some research on it, and some of the good things about it is it allowed schools the opportunity to decide what data points they were going to use to determine student success. So they were going to use like attendance and graduation rates and things like that, school climate, instead of just a standardized test score, which No Child Left Behind used a annual yearly progress report that every school had to submit. And the Every Student Succeeds Act allows some more flexibility for schools and states to report their progress.
I also talked about how it still is holding schools accountable, but it's ensuring that they are able to get their students or kids in their school what they need.
You guys have anything else to add? Thank you.